The step sequencer is actually not that bad. And in today's video, I'm gonna be going over everything to know about the step sequencer. We're just gonna take a deep dive into this. And for those that found it frustrating before, I promise at the end of the video, you're gonna have a better outlook at it, and you may even add it to your workflow later on. So let's just start at the top real quick. As you can see, I'm on the drum track. So usually when I use any kind of sequencer, is really for drums, but I will be going over how you can use melodies a bit later in this video. And you're able to just use the scroll knob to just go through your other tracks. And as you can see, some is already in there, but that's because I already layered it in the grid view, so it will show up in here as well. Let's just go back to the drum track. Then you have sequence, but above that, you may not be able to read it, but it says track length. When it's on sequence, it's only going to follow the amount of bars in your actual sequence. And then you have the tempo, and then you have the global tempo, just in case you want to switch back to the tempo that you have as your default. And right here is more so just showing you where you're at in your bars. So right here, it says pad A01, which is meaning your first pad in the bank A. And at the bottom, it shows you bar 1. And that just symbolizes, you know, this display right here. It's only showing you 1 bar length. And as you can see, right here, the playhead is already at 2 bars. So the way I would get to that is pressing the bar plus sign to get to the second page. So you'll see that more in context. And then you have your parameters. You can mess around with the velocities, different effects like ratchet, and even add in some for the particular track, drum program, or even the pad itself. And you could just choose different parameters. And then right next to it is time division. Time division, I'm gonna get back to that. If you see that this grayed out area and it says 1 to 16, if I was to go to higher time divisions, since it's smaller increments, they have to have another page to play out the whole length. So this is not just 1 bar. Then you have the nudge feature to move over the notes. The nudge feature is just there just to be there, because if you're working on a step sequencer, you obviously are more clicking onto the grid, and then you have different presets. Now I'm just going to jump down here. You got your TC, which is your time correction. You can choose the different time division. As you can see, we on 32. We could just switch back and it will show 16 again over here. And bars, like I mentioned before, it correlates to this amount of bars, which is the display. And pad select, we'll get to that. And then the plus and minus pad, this is a way for you to go through to the different pad, because as you see, this workflow is more so 1 at a time thing. So if I'm working on my kicks, it's only going to display my kicks. So if I play that, but if I skip over, now it's going to play my snares. So, and then you can also hold down shift to access the different pads a lot faster. So I only have 3 pads in use out of all the 16 pads. And when it comes to you loading up your own drum kit, yeah, it doesn't show the name of what sample that you're using, whether it's a kick or a hat. You're going to have some kind of preparation to get better at step sequencer. So what I mean by that, usually I always have my kicks on the first pad, my claps or snare on the second, and on the third, a hi-hat, and on the fourth, a open hat. And then above that is pretty much the same thing, but just different samples. So it's good to develop a good structure, because then when you're flipping through, you don't have to think too much. So I can easily click through to pad 2 and realize, okay, that's the snare, and click to pad 3 and realize that's the hi-hat. So now let's just get into putting in some notes. If you've been producing for a while, you know that the snares usually land on the 2 and the 4. So the 2 is going to be right here because we're in the 8 notes division. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now we have to go to page 2 to go to the second bar, and then we can just easily type that in. Now we could keep going to the 3rd bar and the 4th bar and putting it in that way, or going back to the track length where it says sequence, we could still keep our 4th bar sequence for the whole project, but put this track into a 2-bar sequence. So the way you would do that is put 8 beats, because 8 beats equals 2 bars. 4 beats equals 1 bar. So now that I have it on the 1st bar and the 2nd bar, look what happens. As you see, you don't see that I hit the pad on the other pages because I'm looping just a certain section. If we go to the 16th note division, now it's going to be counted a bit differently, because the 2 is switched to these pads right here, which makes sense because when you count 16 notes, it's going to be 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. So now if you practice transcribing other songs that you hear and transcribing the drum rhythm, not just the melody, you will understand, like the Drake bounce is what I like to call it. I understand it goes 2 A, 3 E, and when you hear it, you're going to recognize this bounce. So let me just go to bar 2 and do the same. Yeah. Just like that, I'm able to put in rhythms a lot faster. So that may take you some time if you're a beginner. Sometimes you have to slow down your workflow to speed it up. Nothing is ever hard, it's just new. So now that I have that bounce, let's say I wanted to get more creative and go to 32 notes. So now 32 notes is a bit faster. Now you can see the 2 is all the way up here. So it's like 1 E and a, 1 E and a before it even gets to the 2. Because you would still count 32 notes the same as 16 notes, but a bit faster. So then I could just experiment with it. Probably put something right here. As you can see, I'm not even seeing the whole page of this second bar. So I gotta click over and then I'll see it. So you could just experiment with it. I could go to the 16 notes and put it on an E and an A. Now, where it says velocity, I'm gonna show you something with the Q links. With the Q links, you're able to control the velocity. So if you hold down Q links, you can see that it says step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And it's just correlating to the actual steps at the bottom. So the Q link controls the different faders for the different options of the parameters. And the way to add this to your workflow and be fast is understanding the top bar is 4, 8, 12, 16. And the reason why I have it as a multiple of 4 is because if I'm trying to turn down to step 5, I understand that the first Q link only goes up to 4. So if I think about it as 4, 8, 12, 16, I know I need to go on the second pad and boom, 5. And then, okay, let's say I want to turn down pad 13. So I know I got to go to 12, which is the third Q link, and then just go to the second knob. Now, you may think that's a lot of work and all that stuff, but the more limitations you have, the more your brain starts to work. And when your brain starts to work, you're able to be more creative. It's just as simple as that. So then I could click the plus sign to go to my hi-hats. Since I'm in halftime, which is 90 BPM versus 180 BPM, which will be double time, I could go to the 8-note divisions. I'm gonna be playing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it will sound something like this. And then you see this fader right here. This is the global fader to turn down everything all at once. Now, you may be thinking, what is this function right here? You might not be able to see it, but it says Flipstat. And all that means is if I have a note right here, when I press flip, it's going to put notes everywhere else except for the spot that I previously had it. So let me hit flip. And boom, that note that I previously had right there is not going to be played, but every other note will be played. With that in mind and just thinking smart, instead of going through like this, all I have to do is just do nothing, because if I do nothing, it's going to pretty much be the invert of that. So now I have it all laid out. Go to bar 2. So I can lay out hi-hats as fast as that. Flip through the time division, and on the second page, then I can add a roll right here. And instead of just starting from the play, start and playing the first bar again, we could go up here and go to bar 2 and just press play, not play start. So you could do something like that. Going back to parameters, I could just go to ratchet. Ratchet is another way to do kind of rolls. So remembering the Q link function, let's say I want to bring up the 9th. I go to the third Q link, which is going to be the first one. And that's going to be on the second page. So let's go to the second page and press play. So now let's just go back to pad 1 to add in the rest of our kicks. So me already knowing that I'm gonna have my other kick hit on the 11th step. When it comes to trap, you're gonna realize most of these bounces are the same. The only thing that makes it sound different is the sample itself and maybe, you know, the velocity change and a roll right next to it. And then I could go to the second bar, and since I'm in the 16-note division, I already know to put it like right there. on the the and the E. You can just be that simple, man. And then the 32 note, you know, go to the second page. I realized when it's right next to it on the 32 note, it may not sound that good, so maybe skip a note. Throughout this beat, you see me hitting a pad function, and I don't really hit pad select. Pad select is just where you could audition your sounds. If I had more pads, then it would make sense. Now you can also hold down shift and you could click it, but then it doesn't really audition the sound. So that's not really that useful comparing to just using a pad select while you're in drum program. And going back to the holding down shift, you can see that I could clear the whole section and clear the bar, and I could switch to a different track. So now I just want to show you how you can actually make a melody using the step sequencer. This time when we're looking at the pad, it actually shows the note and the octave. So that says D2. If I want to go a bit higher, all I have to do is hit the pad note. Like rhythms that are very simple, then you could put that in a lot faster. I know making a trap beat, like some Southside melodies, is very simple. It's just using 1 and 2 and 8 note kind of melodies. So I could just go to the 8 note division, put in C right there. And this is where musicianship comes in handy, because if you have musicianship and understand your notes in a scale, then you could easily find your notes. And I understand that D sharp is in C minor. So I could put that on the 2. And then I'm gonna go to D because, you know, a semitone makes it a bit darker, a little bit of music theory. And then go to the 4th pad and go to probably G. And then it's to sound something like this. And you already know, going back up to the track length, I'm not gonna wanna type all that back in. So I could just go all the way down to 2 beats. And as you can see, it's blacking out everything else. Now it's gonna display this 2-beat rhythm. And we can even add back our drums. And pad select will be more useful in this section because then I could just actually audition a note. So I could go back to D, and then let's even hear how the ratchet would sound on this. And that's on the 3rd step. So we're gonna go to the 3rd Q link on the 1st Q link page. That wraps up this video, man. Thank you guys for watching and tuning in. If you like this video, like and subscribe. Share with your other producer friends that haven't messed around with the step sequencer, and show them that, hey, it's not as bad and you actually make some dope stuff out of it.